Welcome to my channel. Tonight, we are breaking down a basketball game where the main event, well, it wasn't the real story at all. A superstar's huge return was completely overshadowed by a rookie's incredible performance. This isn't just a recap, we're going to explain what this one game tells us about the very different paths these two NBA teams are on.
So, this was the big question hanging over the recent Utah Jazz versus Memphis Grizzlies game, right? Everyone tuned in to see a star come back, but they left talking about someone completely different. So let's dive in and unpack not just what happened on the court, but what it really means for the future of both of these franchises.
All right, so here's how we're going to break it all down. We'll start with that superstar's kind of shaky return, then get to the breakout performance that really stole the show. After that, we'll look at the giant hole in the Grizzlies' defense, what's going on with their identity crisis, what the numbers tell us, and finally, what this all means for where these two teams are headed.
Okay, so heading into this game, all eyes were on one guy, Memphis Grizzlies superstar Ja Morant. He was finally back after missing 10 games with an injury. And, the expectation was that he would just light it up and carry his team. But it didn't quite go down like that. Now, if you just look at the box score, it seems pretty good, right? 21 points, 10 assists. That's a solid double-double. But when you dig a little deeper, the story changes. He shot just 7 for 20. That's not great efficiency. He had 4 turnovers, and maybe most importantly, with the game on the line, he missed the shot that could have won it all. It was a real mixed bag.
And this quote from Sports Illustrated just hits the nail on the head. Morant's return was inefficient and exciting. He had those flashy moments that make you jump out of your seat, but at the end of the day, it wasn't effective. It was classic Ja, absolutely thrilling to watch, but it just wasn't enough to get the win.
So while all the cameras were pointed at Ja, the real story of the night was happening on the other team. The actual star of the game wasn't the guy making the big comeback. It was a young guard for the Utah Jazz who basically decided to have the best game of his entire career.
That guard was Keyonte George, and he went nuclear, dropping a career-high 39 points. 39! The guy was just unstoppable, hitting clutch shot after clutch shot, and he even scored the final 6 points of the game all by himself to seal the win for Utah.
And get this, he wasn't just taking a lot of shots. He was crazy efficient, shooting a ridiculous 60% from the field. For a guard to score almost 40 points while making 6 out of every 10 shots, that is just a monster performance, especially for a rookie playing on the road.
So the bottom line is this. The night was supposed to be Ja Morant's comeback party, but Keyonte George completely crashed it. He didn't just play well, he was the one who shined the brightest and pretty much single-handedly led his underdog team to an incredible upset win.
This brings up a huge question, right? How in the world did a struggling Jazz team, a team that's rebuilding, walk into Memphis and beat a Grizzlies team that just got its superstar back? Well, the answer wasn't about offense. It was about a complete and total defensive collapse.
The real reason they lost wasn't just Ja's off night. It was the absence of their 7'4" defensive anchor, Zach Edey. He was out with an ankle injury, and without that massive presence protecting the basket, the Grizzlies' defense had a giant-sized hole right in the middle, and the Jazz took advantage of it all night long.
And look, the numbers don't lie. This is wild. With 80 on the court this season, the Grizzlies have a top 7 defense in the entire league. But without him, they totally fall off a cliff, down to 22nd, and they give up over 10 more points per game. That's the difference between being an elite defense and, honestly, a pretty bad one. All because of one guy.
80's absence didn't just cost them one game. It was like pulling a thread that started to unravel a much bigger problem in Memphis. This loss exposed a growing identity crisis for the Grizzlies, a split between their established, super expensive stars and their young, hungry rookies.
And this table, man, it lays it all out perfectly. On one side, you've got Ja Morant being inefficient and Jaren Jackson Jr., their other big money star, looking totally out of sync and stuck in a funk. But on the other side, you've got their young guys absolutely balling out. Cam Spencer went a perfect 6 for 6 from 3, and rookie Cedric Coward was called superb, putting up a huge line of 17 points, 12 rebounds, and 6 assists. So the team's expensive foundation is struggling, while the young, cheap talent is thriving.
Okay, so this brings up a really interesting point. How do we actually measure the value of a defensive player like Edey, whose impact is way more than just points and rebounds? To do that, we got to look past the basic box score and dive into the world of advanced stats. And let's start with one of the most famous ones.
It's called PER, or Player Efficiency Rating.
It was created by John Hollinger over at ESPN to try and boil down everything a player does on the court, the good and the bad, into one single, easy-to-understand number. It basically measures how productive a player is for every minute he's out there.
The way it works is actually pretty simple. The formula adds up all the good stuff a player does. Made shots, rebounds, assists, steals, blocks. And then it subtracts all the negative stuff like missed shots, turnovers, and fouls. What you're left with is a rating of that player's overall efficiency.
But, and this is a big but, PER isn't perfect. It's way better than just looking at points per game for sure, but it has one huge blind spot: defense. See, while it counts steals and blocks, the formula is heavily weighted toward offense. And that is exactly why a defensive anchor like Zach Edey, whose biggest impact doesn't always show up in the box score, can be so undervalued by a stat like PER, but so incredibly valuable to his team on the actual court.
So let's zoom out. Let's bring it all together and see how this one surprising game really shines a light on the very different directions these two franchises are headed. This isn't just about one win or one loss. It's about what it tells us about the future.
For the Utah Jazz, this game is a huge shot of adrenaline. Their rebuild is showing real traction. Keyonte George's breakout game wasn't just a lucky night. It's the result of a new maturity and focus. His coach even said he's not the same person he was last year. This is a clear sign that Utah's young core is building something special, and there's a lot of appealing optimism around them.
But for the Memphis Grizzlies, oof. This loss shines a bright, kind of uncomfortable spotlight on a serious problem. Their expensive foundation, built around Ja and Jaren Jackson Jr., is faltering. In fact, JJJ is having one of the worst seasons of his career. It's gotten so bad that analysts are starting to ask if it's time for the Grizzlies to hit reset. Do you stick with your stars or do you pivot? That is a really tough spot to be in.
So this one game leaves us with these massive questions for both teams. For the Grizzlies, do you stay the course with your struggling stars, or do you hit the reset button and rebuild around the young guys who are shining? And for the Jazz, is this the start of something special? The answers are going to define these franchises for years. So what do you think? Let us know your take down in the comments. And hey, if you enjoyed this explainer, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to my channel for more breakdowns just like this one. Thanks for watching.